You always grow up hearing the old saying, oh, when hell freezes over, when something happens. Well, folks, hell has surely frozen over, has it not? The Chicago Cubs and the Cleveland Indians are playing in the World Series tonight. I mean, I just keep waiting to wake up. Somebody pinch me. Is this even remotely possible for these two much maligned franchises to be playing for the big whole bowl of wax, the big chicken dinner, winner winner chicken dinner for one of these two? Wow. Um, Cubbies had the best record in baseball this year. Indians are playing real well. Crazy stuff here, folks. The Cubs have not won the World Series since 1908. Teddy Roosevelt was the president. Televisions had not been invented. My favorite team, the New York Yankees, the greatest franchise in the history of sports. Since the Cubs have last won the World Series, the Yankees have played in the World Series 40 times and have won 27 World Series. So that's how long it's been for the Cubbies. Now the Indians, they are the second longest streak of not playing for all major sports franchises in the world. They have the second longest streak of not winning the championship. 1948, when Truman was the president, is the last time the Indians won the World Series. I think they beat the Boston Braves, but don't quote me on that. At that point in time, credit cards had not even been invented. That's how long it had been. That's how long ago it had been since. So the likelihood of these two teams meeting up in the World Series is astronomical odds. But the series starts tonight, and I hope it's a doozy. I want it to go 7 games. Really would be something else. Cleveland has a home field advantage. The American League won the All-Star game this year, so Cleveland gets a home field against Cubs, even though the Cubs had a better record. But don't think baseball has any, just baseball used to do it. They just alternated years. Didn't matter who had the best record, just one year be home for this, one year home for this. So now they've decided if you win the All-Star game, because of that debacle, I think, in 2002, whenever it was, when there was a tie. So got John Lester on the mound for the Cubbies. I think he was like 19, and he had 19 wins this year, 2.44 ERA or something. Bunch of strikeouts. He's a hell of a pitcher. And then who is it? Is it Corey? Is it Kluber? Corey? Is that who they got going? I think. Let me look and see. I looked at so much stuff today, folks. I want to make sure that I got this right. Yep, Corey Kluber is going for the Indians. He's 18-9 this year with a 3.14 ERA and 227 strikeouts. I mean, we got two aces, two very good pitchers on the mound tonight. It wouldn't surprise me if it's a low-scoring game. Whoever scores first wins. You're looking at the Yankees' bullpen is basically the closers. You got Chapman for the Cubbies, you got Miller for the Indians. I always thought, in my opinion, they're both ex-Yankees, and I'm here to tell you Miller is the better pitcher and closer. So advantage Indians in that aspect. I've one of the things I like to do is, what happened on this day in history. It's October 25th, 2016 today. So what happened on this day in history and, throughout time? Back in 1881, you got old Pablo Picasso was born. I mean, paintings, drawings, engravings, sculpture. I mean, this guy is one of the greatest artists of all time, born in Spain. I think there's like 50,000 pieces of his art still out there. So if you ever get a chance to check some of that, just get online and look at his stuff. He's amazing. Then in 1774 on this day, the First Continental Congress got together. A guy named John Dickinson, we wrote a letter to King George III basically complaining about the coercive acts that the British Parliament had implemented on us after we had, the Boston Tea Party had occurred. So there was the British Port Act, basically, the Boston Port Act. The port of Boston, the harbor, was closed indefinitely until they until the damage that was done in the Boston Tea Party was paid for. Then they had a Massachusetts Government Act, I think it was called, and what that was is that the British controlled all the Massachusetts town hall meetings from that point henceforth, and so there was basically no local control or local rule. There was also these, you know, when you're dealing with the British at this time, they we were a colony to them, just like colonies elsewhere in the world. And so one of these, they had the British Administration and Justice Act, I think is what it was called. And basically that said that no British, either no British officers or no British troops or nobody from Britain could be prosecuted for a criminal act in America. And then finally was the Quartering Act, where it was, you know, we had British soldiers got to live in your home, and you had to pay for them, and they got a bed, and you had to clean their clothes and feed them food and stuff. And so we wrote a letter to King George III complaining about the British Parliament overstepping their bounds, and complaining about that on this day in history. And then some of you guys may be old enough that you were alive in 1983 when we invaded Grenada, a couple days after they blew up the Marine Corps barracks over in Beirut. President Reagan decided to invade Grenada. I never have determined if it was legit or not. We sent in about 6,000 troops, the Cubans and the Grenada, and there was about 1,000 American citizens there. Most of them were medical students. We invaded. About 20 Americans were killed, a couple hundred, 300 wounded. I mean, it was 100 wounded maybe. And then I think that the Cubans and the Grenadans had about 60 soldiers killed and about 300 wounded. So, you know, just in the middle, we're going to invade Grenada to rescue some American medical students. I don't know, that's a little bit of saber rattling probably. But here's my favorite thing that happened on this date in history. This is back in 1854, folks, and this is the charge of the Light Brigade. What's going on is the British are over fighting the Russians over in Crimea. And this is the Crimean War, and it is a shit show, folks. It is a disaster. It is of epic proportions. The logistics and the supplies that the British had to deal with in this war is shameful. The British government should be ashamed to this very day of what they did and what their troops suffered through in the Crimean War. But, you know, strangely enough, the British troops were able to, you know, shake off the terrible logistics and supply problems and beat the Russians, who heavily outnumbered them. And at the Battle of Balaclava, which was the British were winning. I've studied this battle in numerous primary sources. I've read books on it. I've read non-historical. I've read historical fiction about it, non-fiction about it, letters from commanders, the whole 9 yards. And from the best, what happened is this Lord Cardigan decided he got an order. A guy comes up and gives him an order. And what happened is up on they were in a valley, and the British up to the left of the British and above them there was some Russian artillery that had been outflanked and was pulling out. So this Russian artillery was pulling out of their dug-in positions and pulling away. So the thought is we'll send our cavalry at this artillery that's pulling out of position and chase them down and catch them when they're out. Well, Cardigan gets the order. He thinks he's being ordered to charge all the dug-in Russian artillery that's in front of him, like 5,000 yards. I'm not kidding. He didn't. Instead of conferring to see if that was the order, and instead of charging up and taking on this Russian artillery that's pulling out, he just charges his whole damn brigade right into the teeth of one of the most dug-in positions in the history of warfare. Somehow the British even reached the lines of the Russians. Lost 40% of their men and horses killed. It was just a disaster of epic proportion. But everybody, you know, the British, Lord Cardigan, hey, Lord Cardigan is a hero. My God, did you not hear about the charge